Ford actively sought to downplay his athletic prowess because he worried about being cast as a good athlete with a questionable intellect. He wasn't wrong. Lyndon Johnson, the consummate politician as bully, was heard to say that Ford had played too many games without a helmet. Ford later wrote that Lyndon got a lot of mileage out of that quote, but he wasn't above making fun of himself. Speaking at the Gridiron Club dinner one year, a white tie and tails event of the city's elite, Ford said that Johnson was wrong about him not wearing a helmet, pulling out my old leather bonnet and plopping it on his head right then and there. As Shepard Campbell and Peter Landau wrote in Presidential Lies, you wouldn't have known he was an accomplished athlete, not from the way the President of the United States from 1974 to 1977 was portrayed on television and in the press. Ford was depicted as a bumbling, uncoordinated man who had stumbled his way onto the world stage, as he once did coming off an airplane on an official visit to Europe. Newspapers featured pictures of Ford when he took tumbles on the ski slopes or tried to hit his golf ball out of improbable lies in trees and bushes. And countless articles were published describing how Ford had peppered the galleries with wild shots during golf tournaments. Responsibility for the caricature, and it was, to be clear, a caricature, lay at the feet, or more accurately mouths, of two men, Bob Hope and Chevy Chase. Hope, who made it a point to play golf with every president, was a regular partner of the president, but he was merciless in his portrayal of Ford's golf game. One of my most prized possessions is the Purple Heart I received for all the golf I've played with him, Hope said at one point. At another, you can recognize him on the course because his golf cart has a red cross painted on top. While Hope was an established comedian and roaster of the high and mighty, Chase was, in the mid-1970s, an up-and-coming comic. That is, until he began to portray Ford on Saturday Night Live. Chase's Ford was, to put it plainly, a bumbling idiot. In one early sketch, which carried the words, "This is not a good impression of Gerald Ford," on screen, Chase mimicked an Oval Office address by the president. He sneezed into his tie. He mistook a full glass of water for a telephone receiver. He hung up phones on the wrong receivers. Telephone humor was all the rage in the 70s. He accidentally banged his head on his desk. He fumbled with charts. And on it went. Okay, it was only 3 minutes long, but it seemed a lot longer. In another sketch, Ford bumped into a flag on his way to the podium. He repeated the phrase, "First, may I thank you all for being here," several times. He poured himself a glass of water and then tried to drink from an empty glass. You can imagine where the sketch went from there. And then there was the 1976 debate sketch. Dan Aykroyd played Jimmy Carter. Asked by a debate moderator, played by Jane Curtin, a detailed question on fiscal policy, a confused Chase as Ford responded, "It was my understanding that there would be no math." Memes didn't exist back in 1976, but, well, Ford had become a meme. The best athlete ever to occupy the White House became a bumbling fool in the eyes of the public.